there's another question to follow up on this, and I think you mentioned it in the notes here. It's like, so you take a job, and let's say you have an hourly rate, or you do a flat upfront rate, or maybe you
Mm.
negotiate as you go in milestones. How do you handle it when you need to get assets and things like that to help you complete your work? Like I know you mentioned in the notes that, like, what if they're asking you to do something that requires art assets that you don't have, for instance?
So
Mhm.
this is one thing of just being hired to do a job. And this is, I think, a big difference. Like I said, there's two sort of big categories. There's you're either hired to do a particular thing. We need this system in our code, so make this system. And in that case, you normally don't have asset requirements. And even if you do, I recommend trying not to. For example,
Mm.
in my own projects, I'll use the hell out of Dutween. Dutween is amazing. I love Dutween. Um, I won't use it in client projects unless I really think it's going to save me a lot of time. Like if I'm doing UI stuff that fades up and down, I'll just write a coroutine. I mean, it's probably slightly more efficient if I did a cached tweening thing, and it would probably add to some fancier animations otherwise. But I will first of all write it, and we'll get to like designing code so it can scale and you can modularly change it. I will write the first draft of the version I actually send them using almost all my own code. I try my best not to bring stuff in. And the same goes for if you're building a Unity project and you give it to a client, don't use something like Odin, because to them that's silly. It's like you
Uh-huh.
hand them a project, if you give them the code and they're like, oh, by the way, you have to buy Odin and queue hierarchy and whatever. And it's like, why? Like all of that stuff doesn't help their project in any way. If you can get by without it, then try to, or at least export the project out in a way that doesn't need it.
Right.
Um, if you do need work done, so for example, and this is the other thing too, is if a client comes to you for a project and it's got things in it that you don't know how to do. So they want you to say, I want a rhythm game with, custom music and all this stuff. And you're like, well, I'm not a music guy. You'll have to source that yourself. They
Mhm.
might say, no, we want you to do the project. Don't say no, just like do a bit of research, find out who the other people are, and just roll in the fact that you might have to hire someone to do that job. And so sometimes we've done that where we've said, you know what, let's take into account that they want custom models. So we'll have to hire somebody for that. How
Right.
much would I charge someone to do that? Or how much would they charge me? And find out the rates, and then bake in the cost of that plus maybe 30-40% on top of it to cover all of the extra work you'd have to do to find them, and also any things that come up with their work, because it's the same thing. You're basically subcontracting at that stage.
Yeah.
And you may think like, oh, maybe the client won't like you subcontracting. They don't care. They want a project done. And if you tell them, we're doing this thing, I'll do this, I'll do this. We might, and again, I love this phrase, we might need to find someone for X. That's a great way of saying, I don't have that skill. I'm on board for finding somebody. I know some people that might help. Are
Yeah.
you okay with that? And
Which
if they
goes
come back
more
and
into
say,
your expertise. You as someone who
"Mm,
they're hiring as an expert or someone who knows, they're also bringing the fact that you know people who can fill that gap as well.
yeah, yeah, exactly." And I think this is again cycle. It's all part of the same thing. It's building a network, right? Like there are people here. Like Don commented there in the chat earlier about his rates. Like if I ever needed some really good modeling done, I know a guy. Like it's just like it's good to know. Like I haven't worked with him yet officially, but like I know from the stuff I've seen he's really good. And so if I ever needed that, I can at least like throw that to a client and say, this is someone I know that does good work. They
Yeah.
might be too expensive for you. I don't know. I haven't done their rates. That's either you do that yourself and work with them, or I'll talk to them and we'll figure something out. Either way, the point is I have a network of people for that, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's slightly off topic. I guess the point is, what do you do if there are actual assets and stuff? Well, one, keep in mind they're going to own it. So whatever assets get made or done, like don't think you can just get a model made, give it to them, and then use it for other stuff. Does not work like that.
Yeah.
Code is one thing. You might be able to get away with it depending on what you're doing. But as a general rule, I either say, here's code I write that's like my library. And then I sort of gift my library to myself to work for free in the project, but it's my code. And then there's the code for their project. But anything that's their project code is theirs. I'm not
Mhm.
touching it. I'm not using it for anything else. It's only the stuff that's like I've taken out and put in the library somewhere. I try to define that earlier so I can very clearly say this is the two. And if assets need to get made or need to buy assets, you just do it. You just like, if you look at a project and think it might be easier to buy this third party asset for this thing, um, just include it in your rates. Just say, I'm going to do this, and
Yeah.
make sure that you give them knowledge about the licensing. And I think it's to come back to what we said before. It's just generally like they want to see a project done. nobody really cares how the sausage is made, right? That's the thing. At the end of the day, they're not going to begrudge you that you decided this particular element you're going to use like a highlighting shader off the asset store rather than write your own from scratch. Nobody cares, providing you either cover it in terms of you buy it yourself, add it to the project, and then distribute the project, and it's not included in the source code. Fine. Or if they want the source code, you're upfront about it and said you need to buy these 4 licenses legally. Fine. Either way, people don't particularly care. It's not going to be a deal breaker in most cases.
Yeah, Tech Dave makes an interesting comparison. So like we're like general contractors. They ask us to do something, and it's like, oh, I can work on your house for you. I know some plumbers. I know some electricians. I can do a lot of the work, but sometimes I might need to have someone else come in from my network to do a little bit of electrical work or something like that. It's the same with
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
Because again, I think that's again where I would think is the more powerful position to be in.
Yeah,
You could
absolutely.
just be the like you could be the person people hire to do code, or you could be the person they hire to complete projects, and that's a much better position because then you have a lot more control over what you're doing. And to be fair, I say this from the space of I'm not really that guy. I'm more of just the code architecture guy, but the person I work with is more of the project thing, and I'm kind of under that arm. I'm a subcontractor to them. That's not to say I haven't taken on my own jobs that are me doing a project by myself, but I tend to be more that second person than the first. But it's the place you want to be in. It's you want to be known to complete projects, and if you have to like take on more responsibility, then so be it. And this is again comes back to rates. That's also what people are paying for. They're not just paying for you to sit and type. They're paying you're taking on the responsibility of finding people, figuring it out, rallying people together, doing the project management. And that's where the risk reward comes in. So that's why contractors cost more in general.
Yeah. Thank you to all of my patrons, and a special shout out to Jennifer Irwin, Christian, Urizer, Alwyn Kuravilla, Umit Sarin, Anton, Mighty Possum, Amar Duranovic, Dustin, Nav from Academy of Games, Usuf Ali Castle, Iron Alex, Trond, Dark Rush Photography, Glasswell Entertainment, and R-Star. Thank you.